Today, A'marri, the engineer, that's me, and Brook Riley, the controller at Riley Painting, are the co-hosts on this episode as the Young Gun crew providing perspective from the millennial and Gen Z generations. A'marri and Brook talk temperament maintained through the process of selling your home, how to be proactive with fixing up the house and dealing with the city, hurdles and challenges with buyers who pull out last second, working with a realtor, and more on the Cleveland Real Estate Investor podcast. Good morning. This is A'marri Clancy, the engineer for the Cleveland Real Estate Investor podcast. Today, we wanted to bring in a guest that I don't think we brought back to the podcast in a while. You've definitely been on before. Brook Riley, who is the controller at Riley Painting and Contracting, here to talk about the process of selling your home. Brook, how you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. And I'm in the throes of selling a house. So I thought this would be a very good topic. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to explain what I've been going through and where things stand.
Nice. So, just from being your partner in crime here at the office's assistant controller, I've been seeing you really in the depth of the whole selling process. Some meetings I'm a part of, some things I'm just a fly on a wall of, but it seems to be pretty intensive process. How would you say you're faring as far as just your temperament in these kind of situations, as far as like stress levels, the follow-ups to meetings, like where are you just kind of at as far as your temperament with dealing with this kind of stuff and learning about a lot of this stuff?
Yeah, I think it's important to, in the moment, not make a rash decision. I think it's important to make the smart choice, what's best for you. And, as a seller, obviously, you've got a number in mind of how low you're going to go, or like what the number is that you want to hit in terms of a selling price. So I think it's important to really kind of hold true to your cards and what you want to make out of it. And from that comes a lot of other factors, like how much you're willing to spend to fix the house up, how much you're willing to spend once you have a potential buyer, and they come in and do their inspections. So I think it's trying to stay as calm as possible and making the smart business decision at the end of the day. That doesn't mean, however, being stubborn about it. If you find that your house has been on the market for 2-3 weeks and there is no interest and there is no one even scheduled to see it, then that's when you need to talk to your realtor and say, okay, obviously price is a huge factor in what people are choosing to see. So if you're not getting any showings, any interest, then for me, that indicates that, it's priced too high. Luckily for me though, my wife and I own a Rockefeller. So those homes are, when I say they're pretty rare, I mean it. There's only, I think, 80 or 90 that were built. So when these hit the market, they do generate a good amount of interest and showings. So I was happy when we put the house on the market. I instantly got, it seemed like, a couple showings every day. And that was a sign to me that the price point that we had it at was a fair cost, and it supported, the condition of the house. It supported the neighborhood. So yeah, I was happy that we hit that price point. Now, we did have a little roadblock where I got an offer, I'd say within a week of it being on the market, or I got a couple of offers, and we went with an offer that was a little bit more money. It seemed like a good deal, but something fell through at the last second. Literally, I think the day before it closed, which was pretty upsetting, but that's just the nature of the beast with selling your homes. It's not over until you get the wire money from your title company. But hey, we put it back on the market. We put it at the same price. I didn't do anything more to fix it up. And within about a week, I got two more offers, and we went with an offer that was a little bit safer, I think. So, knock wood, it's scheduled to close in about a month.
Nice, nice. Okay. So yeah, that definitely gives a lot of good insight. I think that's even why, I asked that question about your temperament because I mean it can be a little bit of a roller coaster emotionally, you know, uh, for a lot of reasons. So definitely agree with what you're saying. I mean, just from the outside looking in, I haven't gone through the process of buying or selling a home, which is I think why Mike like having me on some of these conversations just to have like more of the hey, here's someone who doesn't know as much, here's someone who knows definitely a lot more, but is still learning, and then we have, Mike's perspective as well of someone who's been, buying and selling for a long time and buys others and things of that nature. So I think you mentioned that you are working with a realtor.
Yeah.
How has that process been, or what observations have you made about working with a realtor and um, just just how that experience has been with selling the Rockefeller?
Well, I think, it's been a good experience. I like when I'm working with someone or when, I've hired somebody or if at the company, we've hired a sub where I don't want to be doing their job. I mean, that's why I'm hiring someone to do it. And so far, they've been very proactive about, not putting things on me to try to figure out. We have that saying here at Riley Painting, the customer's not the foreman.
Right.
And so far with my realtor and this experience, I definitely feel that yes, I'm the customer here. They're working hard to do their job. They're taking the initiative about, filtering through different offers, filtering through things that they can handle. Obviously, at the end of the day, if there's an offer, let's say there's like last week, right? I had two offers on the table and it was like 9:30 at night. And at the end of the day, it's my decision. Like they have to say, look, Brooke, here's the here's the pros and cons of offer one, here's the pros and cons of offer two. Now they're going to give their advice and counsel, but at the end of the statement, they're always going to ask, what decision do you want to make? Which, is obviously the fair and legal and right thing to do. Because at the end of the day, it's my house, it's my mortgage. So, but
Right.
they've been good. So, no complaints so far.
Yeah, and Mike has definitely spoken on this podcast before about the caution of working with a realtor. It's more so dealing with the buying in investment property side of it. Not necessarily as so much as like selling the house that you lived in, but definitely spoken to that awareness of like yes, you're working with a professional, you're working with someone who knows the ins and outs, you're working with someone who literally their job is to help you and provide counsel and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, it is your decision, and you don't want to be in a situation where the realtor is just running your show all the way, and you end up making a decision that you necessarily wouldn't make as you're the most confident in. So it is a interesting balance there from just observing and then also speaking with Mike of it's like you're the customer, you're not the foreman, but at the end of the day you're the customer in terms of making those final decisions based on the advice and counsel that you're receiving and based on your own personal goals with what you're trying to do. So definitely interesting dynamic there.
Yeah.
Um,
But,
so
I will say that like when I had that first offer, I was so proactive about getting stuff done on the buyer's inspection lists, getting the violation work done with the city, and there were some things that, looking back on it, we could have done differently. We could have handled it a different way. I don't want to get into like all the details on that now, but I think there were just ways to better protect myself. So I would say, anyone listening to this would be play out all the scenarios, I think, of what could happen with when you get an offer. If the buyer is asking for an arm and a leg on the inspection list, that doesn't mean you have to do it.
right,
If the inspection list with the city and there's something on there that you just don't want to do, or that maybe you can't get it done due to weather, maybe you can't get it done due to timing and scheduling, there are ways for you to protect yourself so that if something happens, at least you're covered with some sort of protection. So I would say don't offer the whole store to whoever writes you that offer.
right, right. I
And that's
mean,
definitely something that I and my realtors, we took that learning lesson from the first offer and we applied it to the second offer.
so this is more of a question for you and your insight on this, but you also are in a very specific situation of, having this Rockefeller house, really beautiful house, rare house, as well as being in a seller's market. Do those factors play into that aspect as well of like, you're more so you're not in the desert of not getting any offers at all. There's a lot of interest for this house. Does that play into, those aspects as well of sticking to your guns and for certain things, or is that just more of a general rule of thumb?
Well, I think it's a general rule of thumb. I would say the seller's market has, in my opinion, has cooled because this will be my second house I've sold within like a 4-year period. So, you know, back in 2020, 2021, I mean, that's when like I could offer or say to any potential buyer, like, listen, you can have your general inspection. I'm not going to do anything. You're responsible for the violations. If the house is in decent shape. I mean, I think a seller 3 years ago could offer to do a lot less and still get plenty of interest. I think that's just my opinion on that. So
Right.
I think for this round, it was still like I think the seller has of more upside or more the ball is more in their court, but it's definitely cooled off because there aren't as many houses available. So from a buyer's point of view, they're not going to drop 250, 300, 400,000 on, excuse my language, like a shitty house.
Right.
And if they do, then that's on them.
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back. If you've been listening to this podcast, then you understand or should understand the pitfalls of investing in Cleveland real estate. Say you're looking for an investment property to rent, and these are the things that could happen and often do. You overpay for a house, and it's in the ghetto. Then you find that it's a money pit with endless surprise repairs. Your hapless property manager who may be the brother-in-law of the realtor, gets a tenant who after 3 months stops paying the rent. Then the toilet explodes, and you have nobody to repair it because, guess what? The property manager is not answering the phone. Yep, that's the ugly side of the Cleveland real estate market. But we have a solution. Buy one of our properties. It's been inspected. It's been vetted. It's in a rock-solid part of town. It comes with a Gold Star tenant paying top dollar rent, and we manage it. Call us at 216-371-8160 if you're interested.
I think also with interest rates coming back to being normal, that's a big factor too. And, what people can afford in terms of a loan. I mean, I secured my loan when interest rates were at like an all-time low in 2021. So, but, I was presented with a really great opportunity to buy the house that I grew up in as a kid from my parents who had moved. So, it's a bigger house. I'm expecting my first kid in a couple months. So it's in a better neighborhood. It's bigger, it's got more upgrades. So it was kind of a no-brainer opportunity. And I'm pretty fortunate that I'm in a situation now where, I don't have to rush to make the call on selling my Rockefeller. Like I'm walking a very, very fine line here where I want to sell it. I want to sell it quickly, but I'm not going to make a stupid decision on this.
Right.
So I'm in a pretty unique situation. So, but the panic really kicked in when that first offer, it fell through. I remember I was going for a run and I got the email and, I'm freaking out because, I was expecting money to, help pay for our childcare, for our taxes, other savings. And, I definitely had to kind of take a deep breath, reminded myself that it was a popular house. You got a lot of showings. This is just a roadblock. And you really kind of have to keep plowing forward. And so yeah.
Right. So we've kind of touched a lot on, more so in the middle of the process and, more towards where we are today in the process. But what was the process like before you listed? What was that stage before putting that listing out there? And, how did you need to prepare for everything that we're talking about?
Yeah, well, I really took one big thing from when I sold my first house. So I sold my first house, we bought the Rockefeller, and then we stayed in the Rockefeller for a couple years. And when I moved into the Rockefeller like 2 years ago, I made a decision and basically a goal where every couple of months I was going to be doing something to fix up the house. So whether that was, putting a new tile in one bathroom or repainting, a bedroom every couple of months, fixing up the outside, painting the outside. I set these little projects because I knew that when it came time to sell eventually, I didn't want to have to be looking at a huge list of projects to get done.
Right.
So I'm glad I started that process pretty early on. And I think it paid off because I remember when I met with my realtor there and, she's walking through and she's like, this looks great. The design is great. The paint colors are great. The lighting is great. The outside looks great. So I would say, like, if you're thinking about selling your house within a year, a couple years, maybe even 6 to 9 months, is start just putting together a list of things that you could do to improve it, that doesn't require you spending a fortune on contractors. There's always small things that you can do now to prevent, a huge list from when you have that first kind of initial walkthrough with your realtor, where they'll walk around and say, this color doesn't look great, or this paint is flaking, or these lights are really old. I mean, the process was we were working with our realtor who was selling a couple houses for our company, and Mike and I said, hey, look, we're thinking about selling this house, this Rockefeller. Let's do a walkthrough. I met with her. She walked through it. She said, this house looks great. It's so cool. It's so unique. And 2 days later, it was on the market. I didn't have to do a whole lot. I just made sure that it was clean. All the furniture had been moved out. The only thing that she had suggested was, make sure that it's clean and make sure that you can, bring some lights in here, in case there's some showings at night. So that was it. I was proactive on talking to the city about the violation lists. That was definitely a roadblock, just because the violation list wasn't very specific on kind of the details of what the violations were. It took me a couple of attempts to call them and say, look, I really need to meet with someone here to show me exactly what you need done. And so I would say, like, if you have any questions on your violation list from your city, I mean, the city's there to help you, and you got to do what you got to do to, get clarification on what you need. Because the last thing you want, and we ran into this with our houses for the company that we sold. I mean, if there's any delays with the city in terms of violations with, permit paperwork, that will delay your closing. And so I took that experience for my own house. And I mean, I was just super proactive on getting the violations done, getting the inspector out, and then getting the paperwork saying this house is clear. And then ironically, that day was when the first offer it backed out. But at least I got it done. So for the new buyer, my realtor said, hey, the point of sale is clear. There's going to be no issues there. So from a buyer's perspective, that's not like a make or break, but it's definitely like an appealing thing where it's like, okay, great. I don't have to worry about if the seller is actually getting the violations done. So yeah, that was just some observations of what the process was like.
It sounds like the more proactive you are in those early stages, the less of a headache you'll have later on, or the less surprises, the better. When you're actually going through the process of listing your home and talking with people who are interested, potential buyers and stuff like that. It's better to get ahead of certain things, especially when it comes to violations, talking with the city who, like you talked about this before, you always want to be as polite as possible with people, when you're talking with people who work in the city, but you also need to be very diligent, like you were talking about, of, hey, this is unclear. Can someone come out here to, take a look, or can you clarify this? I'm going through that right now, just following up, aggressively but politely with people at the city, just to get clarification on certain things. So the more proactive you are in that beginning stage, the potentially the less stress you'll have to face in the middle of everything when it comes to listing and talking with buyers.
Yeah, no, I mean, if and that can be applied to any aspect of your life. If you're proactive, getting stuff done, you just have this sense of calm, or you have this sense of calm, but then you also have this, I don't know, this is just for me, where if I'm proactive in one aspect of my life, it translates to other aspects. So it has a really powerful ripple effect. But getting specific to selling a house, I mean, if you're not a proactive person and you think you can just kind of wait and wait, and then the house closes in 3 days, you ain't going to get that house closed in 3 days, if you still have to talk to the city and get your stuff done. So start the process out as soon as you can.
So you made your improvements to the house and, were proactive with addressing certain things when it came to the city and, any touch-ups you can do around the house just to, make it look even better. You got the lights for the showings at night. What was the feedback that you were getting when you started to show the house?
I would get feedback of it's there wasn't any negative feedback. I mean, the streets are just a total mess in that neighborhood, so I got a couple of notes on the streets aren't great. And it's like, well, there's nothing I can do about that. So, I would get some feedback that the kitchen is too small. And it's like, okay, again, there's nothing I can do about that just with a Rockefeller. And there's things that you can do, but since they are historical homes, there is sure as shit things that you just cannot do. But my realtor kind of updated, or she told me before we listed that don't be surprised if this house gets a lot of interest, but maybe you don't get an offer right away because it's such a unique house that it's going to draw in the right type of person who wants to live there. So the feedback was, it's so cool, it's so unique. I think it helps that, I think I've got good design. So, the inside I think looked really cool, but it's a funky house. It's a small kitchen. It reminds you of a kitchen, you'd see in like Manhattan where it's small, but it's really unique and functional.
Right.
There's a very small backyard, there's little breakfast nooks. So it's a really cool house, but it's not for everyone. I mean, if you're walking through that door thinking you're going to be living in some, brand new construction home in Solon or, North Olmsted, this ain't the house for you. This is
Right.
someone who likes historical homes, who likes a home that's unique, that has character. So the feedback was positive. It just took some time to find the right type of person who wanted to make an offer.
So when you're getting this feedback, does that affect or change how you approach the selling aspect? Does that change anything about your process going through it? Or is it more so just it provides more of that kind of insight of like, okay, yeah, this is something that you probably already anticipated, but it's just confirming some things about, yeah, this is a very unique house. It's gonna, you know, a kind of unique kind of person is going to more so be drawn to this kind of house, or does it change up the strategy at all?
No, I think for me, it was just doing the best I could. And I think I did do a good job of making sure that the house was updated, that, it looked good. It was clean. It was painted. Did I drop a fortune on the bathrooms? No. Did I drop a fortune on the kitchen? No. But did I do things to fix it up? Yes. So, I think it's all about looking at all of your options and weighing, all right, how much would this realistically cost? And would I be able to recoup this, when it came time to selling? And the biggest thing that I did at the start was put in central air in that house.
Mm.
Not only because I knew that my wife and I would enjoy the house more because, it's central air. And B, I knew that that was something when I came time to sell that I would get that back because it's somewhat rare to have a house, a Rockefeller with central air. So I knew something like that it would not only help me out in the short term and, when it was 90 degrees and humid and muggy, but when it came time to sell, I knew that that was something that would be a huge check mark in my corner and would help support the price point.
Right. So it sounds like a big kind of tool you need in your toolkit is just patience, with the process, especially when proactive from the beginning. You're crossing T's, dotting your I's. It's just an aspect of just being patient for that, right situation.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So where do things stand now in the process of selling your home?
Well, we got the second offer last Thursday, so I signed that offer sheet Friday morning. And right now they're scheduling their inspection. So they put earnest money down. So really the two items that always stand in the way is what the inspection list says, and then making sure that the funding is, they've checked all their boxes in terms of their financing, their loan. So that's really where things stand now. I'm waiting to see what the inspection list says, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Good luck.
So I'll keep everyone posted.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And, I'm sure we'll have you back on the podcast just for an update on how things go, how things went, and, just have another conversation, see where the temperament's at then. And thank you for being on the podcast. I went from being an engineer to being a co-host. You'll be a future co-host, and everyone's getting promoted in the podcast.
There we go. Yeah.
Yep.
No, well, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'll keep everyone posted, and maybe we'll do a follow-up in a couple of weeks. All right. Thanks, A'marri.
All right, Brooke. Talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast with Mike Riley. Please add our show or follow us on Spotify, Overcast, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. Leave a like or comment on the video. All engagement is appreciated. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well for video content coming soon. For any Cleveland listeners or Cleveland Browns fans, you can check out our other podcast, Cleveland Browns Anonymous, for our weekly group therapy session. This is also on all the same platforms as the Cleveland Real Estate Investor.